to Career Uprising. I'm your host and professional career coach, Lorraine Rise. Join me as I guide you through an amazing journey of self-discovery and empowerment. If you are looking for work, changing careers, or stuck in a toxic job, then this is the show for you. I offer both practical and spiritual guidance to help you up-level and advance your career. Let's start the uprising. Hey everybody, you're listening to episode 16, Changing Careers Part 3, The How. Well, here we are. How are you guys doing out there? Another Monday, which means another work week, another full work week stretched out in front of us. I hope that you are doing well wherever you might be tuning in from. So today is going to be the last installment of my 3-part series on changing careers. The first series that I've done, it's been going well, and man, here we are on the last one already. So we've got a big agenda to tackle today. It's gone by so fast, and I have to tell you, it has been kind of crazy here in Virginia. We've had torrential downpours for this is the third day straight. It's really just been raining almost nonstop. It's a little odd for us, but I'm kind of enjoying it. Sometimes I think a cleansing rain is a good thing, but hopefully things are perhaps sunnier wherever you might be listening in. So today, like I said, we're going to wrap up this series on changing careers, and we're going to talk about what I call the how. So this is very much the job search process. And, we're kind of asking ourselves at this point, how do I actually position myself to be hired for this new career, changing from one field to another? You need a plan and you need a strategy. And that's what today is going to be all about. And so much of my coaching practice that I do really is based on the how, on this process, teaching people, the how of how to make a career or a life transition and how to come up with a strategy and a roadmap. So I think it's fitting that we close out the series with this process. And I've got a couple of really specific and actionable tips that I think will help you if you're going through something like this. So because changing careers, like I said before, is a huge process, and we've condensed it as much as we can into these 3 parts and given you hopefully a good high level kind of overview of the process. Because when I coach clients on it, it takes weeks and weeks, and the actual career change can often take months or a year, depending on what you want to do. So hopefully this series has been helpful for you for what we've been able to pack into these 3 hours. So we have a lofty agenda today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by sharing with you one more short story of an awesome career change that I believe really illustrates this process very well. And then we'll go over in the second part of it, more of the how of the job search transition. It's all about taking action in the how. This is so crucial for any kind of career change or just a job search. You've got to take action. And some people don't necessarily know what is the right action for me to be taking. So hopefully I can leave you with some good items that you can act on. So then the last thing that I think, if time allows, which I think it will, I will give you a preview of the 3-step job search strategy that I teach to my coaching clients. I've got, like I said, some very specific actions that you can take. So make sure to listen to the whole broadcast for all of that. And I will give you another reminder too. You can call in. This is a live broadcast, and all of the shows in July have been live, which is exciting. So I'm still giving away free gifts. So if you are listening live now and you've been thinking at all about maybe calling in for a 5-minute phone chat, getting a little bit of help, I would love to talk to you. I've got quite a few tip sheets, e-guides, and books and things like that I can share that will give you an extra little layer of support through whatever career change or job search you might be going to. And I let you pick which one you want. So definitely today would be a great day to call in. The number is 1-760-456-7277. That's 1-760-456-7277. All right. So let's dig in here. And like I said, I want to start out today's lesson by sharing with you a quick and very special story of an amazing career change. And I'm really excited to share it with you because it hits really close to home. It's actually my husband. And God bless him, I have his full permission to share this story today. And to be honest, I've always had it in the back of my mind that I would share his story probably on a show at some point because it's such a good career change. He's made a couple of them. And so I really think that it will help people to hear this story. So I always knew I would share it, and I think today is the right episode to do it. I was just kind of waiting for the right time. So, and even though he's my husband and wasn't formally a client, I have helped him and coached him quite a bit in his career, and he is an excellent example of someone who has made a very impressive career change from one field to another that had nothing really to do with each other at all. This was not just a career pivot. It was a full-on career change. So let me give you just a little bit of background here so that you can kind of understand hopefully the magnitude of this change that he made. And my husband's name is Ron, by the way. So his career actually began as an airline pilot right after college, which is cool, so cool in and of itself. And so that was his dream when I first met him many, many years ago. It really was. And he made it happen. So right after he got his degree and right after college, he became a pilot, flying commercially. And after a couple of years, he needed to make a change. So he did. And he took on a position actually on the ground, no longer in the air, as an operations manager for a government contractor here in the DC area. And so he worked on this contract for 7 years, managing a team and working alongside a lot of software developers. And so ultimately, he reached a point where I think he just felt like things had run their course, and it was a time for a change after 7 years. And so he did decide to go back and do a brief stint in the airlines, but again, decided at that time it wasn't the right move. So there's a couple of job changes happening in there. But after the brief stint back in the airlines, he decided that what he really wanted to do at that time in his career was transition into software development. Now, he'd never formally been a software developer in his career, never actually held that title, had no computer science degree or technical certifications of any kind. So there was really nothing at all on paper that we could show for this career change. But he did have one thing, which was his unbelievable skill and his personal experience. So for almost his entire life, Ron really had a passion for technology from the very beginning, even as a child. And he had taught himself a lot of programming languages. And he even, some of my clients know this, he even made my own website, worksmartcounseling.com. So if you have been to my website, then, well, you've seen his handiwork. So he'd made a lot of websites and done a lot of software programming on his own because he was interested in it and wanted to learn it, but never because it was formally his job or because he went to school for it or anything like that. And that can present a challenge when you want to get a job in a field where you don't have, quote, formal work experience for it. And I think it's a formidable challenge and one that I think would probably keep a lot of people from trying to pursue that new career. So when he was looking for work in early 2017, we got to work focusing on his transferable skills as much as we could and really repurposing his resume. And so what we did was, and maybe this will help some other folks who are kind of wondering how they can change their resume up and kind of focus on those transferable skills. And we'll talk more about that at the end of the show. We'll go back to that topic for a minute. But what we did was we stripped away as many of the aviation references, having been a former pilot, that we could, and just pulled out any software related experience that he had, whether it was for a job or a personal project, such as my website. And he'd done websites for other people in our family and that type of thing. So not having any kind of a technical degree or any formal job experience, though, we knew that this might be a challenge for him to make this transition, but he was committed to making it happen. And he had so much experience. It just wasn't official job experience. But he'd been building computers, using computers, fixing computers, programming them almost his whole life. I think when he was 5 is when he really got started with computers. So the skill was there, just nothing he really felt like, he could put forth on paper. But once we adjusted his resume and we began applying, he did secure an interview with a company right here in our hometown. And this was not an entry-level role by any means, so he did not end up having to take a step back, as a lot of people worry that they might have to do. This was actually a senior level software developer role. And he was able to get an interview, and he performed a technical test at the interview to demonstrate and make sure he could actually do the software coding. And he blew the test out of the water. I mean, he absolutely knocked it out of the ballpark. And he got the job, actually. And in fact, he actually still to this day holds the record for having performed the best on that technical test in the interview so far. He's very proud of that. And this was especially miraculous because this was the one and only job he had applied to. His skill was that fantastic that he got the job and he didn't have to keep searching, which was incredibly, and it appears on the surface too, to be incredibly fast. But I want to kind of peel some of these layers back and help you to see that although he only applied for one job and got it right off the bat, this was truly like a 7-year career change in the making. It's kind of like those people who get famous and it looks like it's an overnight sensation, but you don't see all the hard work that went behind it all those years before. It looked quick on the surface, but he had been honing his skills and teaching himself these new programming languages for years, but he was just now cashing in on it. So it really was a process. So while he was at that operations management job that he had, it's worth noting he repeatedly went above and beyond and took on software development projects that were completely outside of his job description because he wasn't one of the developers there. He was a manager, but he had the interest and the desire and the ability. And so he asked for that work and he took those projects on. And he did this because he was committed to continuously learning and improving his skill, whether his employer asked him to or not. He did it for himself. And I want you to take that message home because that's really important. That's going to make you successful in your careers. If you can adopt that attitude of, I'm not going to wait, for the employer to ask me to go get this certification or do this or that. I'm just going to do it because I want to. That's huge. So specifically, no one his job asked him to do this, but he saw a need and he developed an application, a computer, like mobile application that the company eventually adopted and used for years. And he subsequently went on to win, I think, 2 awards from it. I think he won 1 award on 2 levels. So this was truly, him demonstrating his skill before he ever held the formal job title. And it was his experience with that and with developing that app that we were primarily able to draw on when writing his resume. It was because of that we had something to show on paper, whatever it was all we had. But we highlighted that hey, he had developed this really successful app and the company adopted it. And, that's kind of how we made the case for why he should be able to be hired as a software developer, even though he'd never actually been one. And he'd been a pilot before. So I want you to know that I'm sharing this story with you because I want you to take away a couple of things. One, career changes are a process. So you have to commit to that process. All right. And if you're making a really significant one, like going from a pilot to a software developer, it's going to take time, but it's so worthwhile. I mean, if you ask him now, he is so glad that he took the time all those years to hone his skill and do more than the minimum, because it's paying off now, and it made it so much faster when it did come time for him to change jobs. So so the lesson is that it can take time. Now, whether that time is in going back to school to get training or teaching it to yourself as he did, you can do it either way, whatever is faster or more feasible for you. Going back to school, believe it or not, usually is a lot faster. It took him 7 years, but that's because he took the road of teaching it himself. When you compare that to getting a degree that's 2 or 3 years, it makes that degree look a lot faster now, doesn't it? But the second thing that I want you to take away from this story is the use of transferable skills. You can use those to make a career change if those skills are very strong and you really do have them. You're not just kind of stretching it, right? You have to be able to prove to the employer that you have those skills. And like I said before, kind of as a bonus tip in there or takeaway, the reason he was, I believe, so successful at demonstrating his technical skill was because all his career he'd gone above and beyond and taken his professional development as his own responsibility and something that he was going to do regardless. He was always learning. And you really have to do that in technology, especially. You have to stay a little ahead of the curve, but always keep your skills sharp. Keep yourself competitive before you think that you need to be. All right. The time to be proactive, the time to go out and maybe get that degree or get that cert or learn that skill. The time is now before you think that you're going to need it. So the hard work that he had done to stay up with technology and teach himself all these programming languages ultimately paid off, because when he was unemployed and needed a job fast, it happened. And it made it seem, like I said, like he made the career change overnight, but I want you to know that he definitely didn't. Okay, so here's what I think we will do. I think let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break right now. That way, when we come back, I can go ahead and dive in to the tips and the job search strategy. I have quite a bit more material to go through. So let's just take a quick commercial break. And if you are thinking about calling in, now's a good time. You've got about 3 minutes or so here to get in my queue before we come back. But you can call in anytime during the show if you'd like. So like I said, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to go over 2 crucial steps that you must take to make a career change. And I'll give you a sneak peek of my job search strategy that I teach my coaching clients. So you won't want to miss it. We'll be right back. We're on a short break again, and I have a question for you. Are you looking for a new job, but you don't know where to start? Many clients don't know how to launch an effective job search, and they spend months or even years looking. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. My coaching program, Career Jumpstart, is an excellent solution for those who know what job they want, but they need a plan for how to get there. In this program, I will personally guide you on how to confidently and authentically market yourself to employers, resulting in a better job faster. If that sounds like what you need, head over to my website, worksmartcounseling.com, and apply for the Career Jumpstart program today. That's WorkSmart, COUNSELING.com. All right, let's finish up our show. I'd love to answer your questions. Give me a call in today's episode, recorded live, by dialing the U.S. number 1-760-456-6653. 7277. That's 1-760-456-7277. And let's see how we can improve your career. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me, and let me take that quick little break there. Okay, so we are, like I said, we're in part 3, wrapping up our series here on changing careers, and I want to take a minute and make sure that you had a chance to check out steps 1 and steps 2 in the last 2 episodes. So in the first one, which was the why, so we're doing changing careers, the why, the what, and the how, and they happen in that order. So if you haven't had a chance to go back and get all 3 of them together, I'd highly recommend that. It's all in the archives, easy to find on inflowradio.com. Just go to my show page and you can see all of my past episodes there. And I'd really recommend that you try and take in all 3 of them, because the why is all about your motivation. Why do you want to make this career change? What's important to you? And what are your priorities in it? And then a lot of people skip that step, and it's such a crucial one. And then the what was all about, what is the next role? What job would I be excellent in? Where would my skills and my talents be best put to use? And there were a couple really specific resources that I gave everyone last week that will help you to figure that out if you don't know exactly what the right career is for you. So please go check those out if you haven't done so. And all right, so let's get into the how. Let's kind of dig into this, because once you have identified a career and you know what your target is and what job you want to move into, which we outlined in the first couple of parts, it's time now to craft a strategy on how you're going to get there. How are you going to position yourself as competitive, and especially when you're competing potentially against other people who have already been doing that job, that can put you at a disadvantage sometimes, but it can be done. And I certainly do hope that you can take away from the story I just shared and see that sometimes you really can get the job even though you didn't have the formal prior experience. It can happen. So hopefully my husband's story will help you to kind of see that is possible. So like I said, when you change from one field to another, one of the biggest hurdles, as you can imagine, is the lack of experience. And I think a lot of people struggle with how to present themselves if they lack the experience in their targeted field. And so there's a couple of ways to approach it, and certainly taking a little bit of a step back and starting with either an internship or entry-level position would be the most logical way to do it. And I've shared with you examples in some of the previous episodes of times when I did have to take a little bit of a step back in title and in pay, but it was so worth it in the long run. So I have definitely done that. And I also found that it wasn't as big of a step back as I thought it would be. It was pretty slight, actually, when I considered in the long run what I was going to be gaining. But that is one way, of course, to approach it. So if you're in a position where you don't have to necessarily keep making the exact same salary that you've had before, consider taking it down a notch just to kind of getting your foot in the door. And then you may, within even just a year or two of having that experience, be able to maybe renegotiate your salary or move somewhere else. See it as a stepping stone if you do have to take a little bit of a step back. Absolutely see it as a stepping stone and not a permanent step backwards. But if you can't take too much of a big step back, there's a couple other ways that you might be able to overcome this. And of course, going back to school and getting the degree or the training, sometimes that is absolutely necessary. And that is the way to do it if you need to be more competitive and keep your salary up at a higher level. But let me outline a couple of steps that you can take right now that are not necessarily going back to school and the big time and money and investment. So maybe try these couple of methods first. And if they don't work, then you may, at that point, need to dig a little deeper or, kind of have a different strategy in there. But the first thing that I recommend for anyone who is making a change from one field to another is to find a mentor. This is really, really important. And this is something that I have coached my clients on how to do. So I really can't stress the importance enough of finding a mentor or somebody, even if it's not a full-on mentor, somebody that you can kind of align with during this change. But you always want to align yourself with someone who's already in the field and doing what you want to be doing. There's really no richer source of guidance than from someone who's already a step or two ahead of you, right? They're already where you want to be. This person can be invaluable in giving you guidance and possibly even a referral, because you're going to have one more person in your back pocket in your network when you do this. But you need to get out there and start talking to people who've made similar career transitions and find out how they did it. Find out why they got it. You can even interview them a little bit and find out why they got into that line of work. I would ask them, why they got into it, what they love about it, what they don't love about it, what advice they would have for you. And all of that information is so rich, because then you can really assess, okay, is this something I still really want to do? Or maybe I need to change my strategy. But it's a critical first step that I would recommend to anyone and everyone who's changing careers. Find someone in your chosen field who can help you. Now, they don't necessarily, like I said, have to take on a full-on regular mentorship with you, although that's amazing. But at least find some people that you can informally kind of interview and pick their brain a little bit, because it's crucial that you talk to people who are doing what you want to be doing. So informational interviews, that's what we'll call this. I think that's a good name for it. But you can gain so much information this way. And you get a new buddy, right? Like I said, you get another person to add to your network, which is what you want to be doing. So I think the first step is ask yourself, do you already know someone who's in this line of work? If so, contact them. Tell them that you're contemplating, switching from being an accountant to getting into nursing or project management, whatever it is. Tell them what your goals are, and you would appreciate their guidance and their insights. Now, if you don't know anybody, LinkedIn can fix that for you. You've got 450 million people at your fingertips, because that's how many people are on there. And you can search for them by job titles and keywords. Seriously, it couldn't be much easier. And you don't have to worry that these people are strangers, because I've connected with plenty of people on LinkedIn who I didn't know whether I reached out to them, they reached out to me. That's absolutely led to phone calls and connections, shared resources, and ongoing relationships. I've done this, so I don't preach anything to you. I don't practice. I promise. But this is great to do. Simply do a search on LinkedIn for people with your desired occupation. Look at their profiles a little bit. Find out, how are they presenting themselves online? What are they writing about themselves on their profile? You're kind of like doing a little bit of competitive research. and they're all there. It's free. And you don't have to, like I said, worry about the fact that they're strangers, because you're just having a phone call. You don't have to go meet them. It's perfectly safe. You can even just email back and forth, whatever works best. And not everyone's going to reply. We know that, right? No big deal. We know that not everyone that you reach out to is necessarily going to get back to you, but that's okay. You only really need to get at least one or two people on the phone or to email you, and you can learn a ton. And I think that you will also be surprised how willing people are to have a phone call with you if you're asking for their advice. People love to give free advice, don't they? They love to share their expertise. They really do. I mean, what if it was you? You kind of flip it around a little bit. If somebody came to you and said, "Oh, I love the work that you're doing. I'm contemplating getting into that field. Do you think you would mind just answering a couple of questions for me for like 10 minutes? I'd love to know what you love about your job and just do a little interview with you." A lot of people would say yes. I would say yes. I would say yes. Absolutely. I love being interviewed. But so the point is that don't be shy. People want to help you. They really do, especially if it's somebody that you know. And there's actually a feature on LinkedIn exactly for this. And I think it's called career guidance. It's pretty new, where LinkedIn will connect you with people who can give guidance or expertise on a certain subject. So LinkedIn's trying to make this easy for you. I would look into that feature and see if you can find someone who you can just have a few phone calls with. And they may even be able to give you some feedback on your resume and give you some tips. As somebody who is in that line of work, who better really to be advising you on that? All right. But in all seriousness here, you need to be having conversations with people who are doing the work you want to be doing. If you haven't been doing that yet, let's get started. Okay. Ask them what advice they have for someone like you who doesn't have a lot of experience but wants to break into the field. What's the one action they think that you should take? Or who are the people they think you should know? Companies you might want to pursue. There's a million questions you could potentially ask them. And if they had it all over again, would they do it? This can really help you make this a meaningful move and make sure that you're getting into work that you really do want to be doing. And don't forget to ask how you can add value to their network as well. This is important because we know that networking is about relationships. It's about being a two-way street, and that always helps. And we're going to talk actually more about this in next week's episode. I'll give you a little preview of that at the end. So we're going to dig into that even deeper. But ask how you can add value to their network and just show that you appreciate their time. Perhaps you can help refer a certain type of customer to them or advise them in some way, but just ask. I think that they will, if nothing else, appreciate you asking. So your goal in this conversation and in finding a mentor and doing these informational interviews is to try and get a realistic preview of what doing that job might be like and get insights into how you can better market yourself for it, knowing that you don't have as much experience maybe as some other people applying for the jobs. And there's no better way really to get that information than from somebody who's already there. All right. And you'll make a new connection. So that is my first step, guys. All right. Go out there and start having conversations with people who are in your desired line of work. Okay. So let's go to number 2, transferable skills. Okay. So I get a lot of questions from job seekers about this. I get a lot. And if you do go out there and do a Google search for transferable skills, I think that you will find a plethora of articles, some of which I've even written. I'll admit I've written a lot of blog articles about this as well, because it's something that I think a lot of people are curious about and struggle with. And I think that it's kind of that standard go-to advice out there that, if you're changing careers, you need to focus on your transferable skills. And to a certain extent, that is true. So I'm going to give you guys my opinion on these and my experience on this topic. And I do hope too that I will say, in hearing the story a few minutes ago about my husband, I do hope you see that it can work to focus on transferable skills. Sometimes it really can work if those skills are really, truly there and you've really been doing it and have something to show for it. Okay. But it's hard to know sometimes exactly what a transferable skill is. So essentially, this is a skill that you have that is not necessarily specific to that line of work. It can be applied to many different types of work. So for example, if you have experience in being managing projects. Well, you can manage a lot of different types of projects, and you can go take that and move into a different industry with a totally different type of product or something like that. So that's kind of a transferable skill. But it's very common, very normal that a lot of people don't really know what these are, all right, or how to showcase them in their resume, all right? So, like I said, what we did with my husband's is we looked at these job descriptions very closely, and we stripped away anything that wasn't necessary. So anything that pertained to his former career, we didn't think would help this cause, we took off, because your resume is not just a list of everything you've ever had or done in your career. No, it's a strategic marketing document. So you need to use it in that way. And it is absolutely okay to take some skills and some experiences off if it's not really relevant. Now, we don't want to necessarily just take a whole job off or anything, but it is okay to downplay some things and play up other things. Absolutely. So I think that's why it's a lot of people struggle with it, because it's really hard when you're changing into a new field and maybe you're not as familiar with what those skills are and what those employers want to see on your resume, which is why it's so important that you do enough research on this new career and talk to people and get a mentor, talk to people who are in that field, because they can tell you, oh, these are the skills you need to focus on. These are the transferable skills that you'll be able to put in your resume that they will be looking for. Plus, we don't always, as individuals, really see ourselves that objectively. So it really helps sometimes, whether you have a mentor or a career coach like me or whomever, take a look at your skill set and sometimes help you point out things that maybe you don't see. I do that all the time with clients, and I love it. I love it. I love it when people learn things about themselves, or they don't realize, oh, that is an important skill. That is something I can put on there. But I've found that most clients that I work with do tend to downplay their accomplishments and underestimate really the value that they bring. This is very normal. So that's one of the benefits, like I said, of working with like a coach or a resume writer, is you kind of get that fresh and neutral perspective. All right. So what I do in working with clients on this is we list out the top skills contained in those job descriptions, or perhaps the top skills that you've learned from your informational interviews. But list those skills out or highlight them, whatever you'd like. Then brainstorm examples of how you've done those skills in your previous roles, and make sure that those are on your resume. And your first bullet point on your resume should always be your strongest. Under each position, your first one or two bullet points, those need to be the strongest, and meaning most specific to this line of work. They need to be the most relevant. Okay. So that's what I want you to do is pull those out. Think of very specific examples of how you've demonstrated that skill and what was the result. What was the result of what you did? And make sure that's the first one or two bullet points under there, because that's what people are going to see. That's what they're skimming for. Now, I did write a full-length article on this last fall called Transferable Skills, a Key Ingredient to Changing Careers. What an apt title, right? So you can actually find the full-length article on my blog site. So if you go to worksmartcounseling.com, just click on blog. I've got I think I said in a previous episode that it was 70. I was so wrong. I have over 100 articles that I have written on various topics, and transferable skills is certainly one of them. So the name of that article is Transferable Skills, a Key Ingredient to Changing Careers. You can find that on my website. And I think I've posted it in my Facebook group as well. I think I've made it pretty available to you guys. But anyway, if you can't find it, you can email me and I'll make sure that you can see it, because it might help you. If you go to my blog site and just type in the word skills, it comes right up though. Super easy to find. So the thing to remember here is that depending on the complexity of your career change, relying on transferable skills alone may or may not be enough. It is not enough for every career change. All right. So usually if you're going into a field that's still fairly similar to what you've done, it might work. Okay. It might work. So an example of that would be Martha Pabin, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago on this show. I want to say maybe episode 12. I'm getting enough of them up there that I'm starting to forget. But Martha was a public school teacher, and she wanted to leave the public school system, but still do something within curriculum design, teaching, training, professional development, and that's exactly what she found. So she didn't go back to school. She didn't get any extra certs or anything like that. She relied solely on her transferable skills and networking. She did a lot of informational interviews and connected with a lot of people on LinkedIn. So she did steps 1 and 2. She found people to talk to and align with in the field, and she focused on her transferable skills. And that's one reason why I think she was so successful and was able to find a new job in the corporate world in about 3 months without going back to school. Really, really great interview. If you haven't heard that, go back into the archives, go to inflowradio.com, go to my show page and hear that interview. Because that really, when I think about it, is an excellent, excellent case of transferable skills. So as long as it's a similar job with kind of the same core functions, but just kind of maybe in a different setting, different industry, it's likely that you'll be able to rely on your transferable skills. Like I said, I've had a couple of clients be able to do that exactly without going back to school. But if you're doing something a little bit more complex, you're going to go from being an accountant to being a nurse or, anything, that's a different story. Okay, I think at that point, you're probably going to have to go back to school and get a degree and training and that type of thing. So it just depends on what you're doing. And I really have to say, in thinking about the story that I shared about my husband, his 2 fields were pretty different. Being a pilot's got nothing to do with being a software developer, but at the same time, he had that kind of intermediate job as an operations manager where he was working alongside software developers and learning from them, kind of collaborating with them, and then honing his own skill kind of privately on the side. So he had this kind of intermediate step in there, a 7-year intermediate step, that allowed him to be able to rely on his transferable skills, because normally software development is something where you would absolutely have to go back to school, get a training or cert, something like that. But he was able to not do that because he had begun to kind of get some experience in it a little bit, enough that he could prove that he had the skill. So he had kind of an in-between step there a little bit. All right. So let's do this. Those are the 2 action steps. Find a mentor and focus on your transferable skills, and figure out just for yourself, is transferable skills enough? Is that going, and you can ask the person that you speak to as you start to network and start to talk to people in this new line of work, ask them, is it going to be enough for me to rely on my transferable skills? Do you think that will be enough? Or what am I going to really need to go out there and get in order to make myself competitive? And I may be able to help you with that as well, because I coach clients in all different fields. I've worked with everyone from financial to construction workers to tech people to a metallurgist. And I had to go Google what that was. When I had that client approach me, he was a metallurgist. I didn't know what the heck that was. I had to Google it. That's kind of a funny story, but I've worked with people from all different lines of work. So I may be able to give you some guidance, kind of since I've seen that whole perspective of all the different fields. That's one reason why I like not having a niche in terms of what people do. I feel like it gives me a much richer perspective as a coach, because I see the difference between a lot of different fields and what it takes to get into this one and that one. And I have kind of that frame of reference because I've had clients from so many different fields. So, all right. So let me give you guys a little bit of insight here into the job search strategy that I coach my clients on, because whether you are changing careers or getting another job in the same field, this will apply to you. This will absolutely apply to you. So, and I also did a webinar. I've done two free webinars earlier this year on this strategy. So if you've gotten on to any of my live online events, then you might be familiar with it a little bit. But if not, I hope this helps you to give you a sense of how you might want to approach the job search besides just applying for jobs online, which can work for some people if they're super qualified and look good, really good on paper. But if you don't, if you're going to a whole nother field, it's highly unlikely that just applying for jobs online is really going to get you where you want to go. Okay, so what I do, my 3-step process is called research, connect, and apply. And you have to do them in that order. And I may have touched on this in a previous episode, but I don't think I've gone into it in any kind of depth. So this is what I teach clients to do. It's research, connect, and apply. And kind of the premise of this strategy is that having a strong resume is just one component of a successful job search. It's just one part, but it isn't the job search. All right. So the first step to an effective job search really is to conduct some research. And this is really critical too if you're changing careers. Because when you're changing careers, you have to research career paths, not just companies. You have to research yourself a little bit and your priorities. Then you got to research the career path. Then you got to research the companies that will offer you that. But so what I would do is start by developing a list of target companies that you might like to work for. So this assumes that you know what job you want and you know what you want to be doing. Start compiling a list of companies that you might be interested in working for. And I know that you don't necessarily know the next company that you're going to work for, but that's okay. We're seeing who's out there and we're seeing who's hiring. And there's a number of resources that can help you to uncover some potential new employers if you don't know where to look. Your local Chamber of Commerce, believe it or not, is one. They have a list, a directory, usually sorted by industry, of all the local employers in your area. This can be great if you're looking for a local search or relocating. But that can give you a lot of ideas of top employers in your area. LinkedIn, of course, great place to do research. I think that's one of the best uses of it, actually. It's excellent for networking, excellent for research, and it's kind of a job board secondary. It's not really its primary function. Google, of course, good old-fashioned Google search. There's Fortune 500, Fortune 100 lists, the top employers of Washington, D.C. There's all kinds of top employer lists out there for local areas. And then there's also a neat website called vault.com. Check that one out as well. Its intent is to help you research potential employers within certain industries. So very cool website there. And the reason I want you to do this is because it's not just about what's available online, because it's such a small percentage of what is actually available. All right. But it's not just about, who's posting jobs on the job board, but where do you want to work? Right? Where do you want to be? You have choices in life. And the more strategic and more targeted your search is, the better off you will be. So research is a critical part of that. All right. So your goal is to identify companies that might be hiring in your field. And it'll also help prepare you for the job interviews because you'll have a better understanding of the company's values and their needs, their competitors, that type of thing, because you've spent a little bit of meaningful time reading about them, talking to other people about them. And so you can learn about their potential growth opportunities, what they're trending. LinkedIn has a lot of great information about that on their company profiles. And it allows you to kind of focus your search on employers that share your values and might actually be a good match for you. So after you've compile a list of some employers, use a spreadsheet, something like that. I've got a special tool that I share with all of my coaching clients. But the next step in 2 is connect. All right. We talked a little bit about this with finding a mentor or people to interview. That's kind of what step 2 is. So if you already have all of your connections on LinkedIn, this should be super easy because they're all right there at your fingertips. Just do a search for each company that you plan on applying to and see if you have any connections that will Because if you do, they're going to float right to the top of your search results. You're not going to have to dig very far for them. Like I said, LinkedIn makes it easy, okay? But cross-reference every job that you apply to make sure you don't actually know someone who works there or know someone who knows someone who works there. I have seen this happen successfully so many times, okay? I've seen people's minds get blown, right? So who are you connecting with? Well, of course, you're anyone in your own network. That's always, always where you start. Start with your warm leads, your own network. But from there, you can reach out to recruiters. You can try hiring managers if you know who it is. That's a little tricky. But start with your warm leads, the people who know you in your current network. They're going to be the most willing to help you. And it's most likely that that's going to produce the most immediate ROI, right? Because there's already a relationship there. But a good best practice would be don't consider your application complete until you've really made an honest attempt to get in touch with someone and make a connection with someone who works at that company. And ideally, it would be before you apply. That gives you an extra advantage because you can get a little bit of information about the job, which sometimes you can then use to tweak your resume or tweak your approach. But try to make a connection with someone who works at the company before you apply. All right? It's not always feasible. I know you won't be able to find a meaningful connection to every job, but do your due diligence and really try. And then you can apply. Applying for the job is the last step. Most people skip steps 1 and 2 and they just go right to the job boards and just apply and shoot resumes off, just fire it off. That can work, but not for most people, and it takes a really long time. So you want to kind of expand your thinking a little bit here and realize that applying is the last step, all right? Because your goal is to identify companies that you want to work for, find a contact at that company, whether you see a job posting or not, and nurture that connection. And yes, you can still apply online on job boards. I just don't want you to make that your only strategy because that's where you're going to get into trouble, okay? So, like I said, the benefit of connecting with someone before is that you can ask questions, you can maybe uncover some new insights about the company. I'll give you a quick example. We only have a few minutes, but there was a client that I worked with who was trying to get into a big, well-known company, a name you guys would all know. And he had a connection inside that company. And he was working with me at the time. And that connection was able to share with him something really critical, that company was huge on customer service. And he really needed to emphasize that in his resume. So we did. We went back and we made a few edits and emphasized his customer service experience. And he ended up getting the job. So that's an example of how connecting with someone beforehand can give you a competitive advantage and help you kind of refine your approach a little bit. When you engage all 3 aspects of this strategy, you're going to be reducing your job search time and increasing your future job satisfaction because you'll be focusing on companies where you would be a good fit and where you have a connection who can potentially refer you. All right. So now you may have guessed that this approach takes a fair amount more time and effort up front, which is one reason I think why a lot of job seekers don't do it. Kind of scares them away. They just go right to applying. But the good news is that because you are putting in the time and effort up front in the beginning, you're going to actually get an overall reduced job search time and likely a better fit. Okay. Applying just online kind of gives you the illusion of being productive, even though it actually, in the end, can take a longer amount of time. All right. So that's what I call short-term pain for a long-term gain. All right. Well, the time flew by, guys. I hope that those tips were helpful for you. I feel like we tried to kind of jam pack a lot of information into that. So hopefully that serves you. And I will be back next Monday, as always, at the same time. I broadcast live, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and we'll have a new topic. We're going to get into networking. Like I said, I'm going to tell you to stop networking and start connecting. And I've got some great guidance to offer you around that. I'm going to really help you to have kind of a new definition of what networking is. But don't forget to connect with me via my Facebook group, Career Uprising, or LinkedIn, or sign up for my newsletter. You have a lot of choices of ways that you can kind of get some more help, some more motivation in this process. All right. And check out my show page too at inflowradio.com. And then there's also, of course, my website, worksmartcounseling.com. But I hope you guys have a beautiful, beautiful week. And I think it's about time I turn you loose. So I thank you for the opportunity to serve you through this show. And it's time for me to send you back out into the world, guys. Have a gorgeous week. I'll talk to you next time. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard today, please consider giving the show a positive review on iTunes. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help to spread the word so that others can learn about the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you again next time on Career Uprising.
This show was brought to you by inflowradio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.